I stared at the divorce papers scattered across my kitchen table, my mother-in-law's shrill voice still ringing in my ears. The morning had started normally enough. I was reviewing quarterly reports while enjoying my coffee when Margaret burst through my front door, waving papers and screaming about how her precious son deserved better. "You have until tonight to sign these," she spat, her designer handbag swinging wildly on her arm. "You're nothing but a gold-digging secretary who trapped my James. Did you really think we wouldn't figure it out?" I maintained my composure, carefully setting down my coffee cup. At 32, I'd spent years cultivating the perfect mask of calm, especially around Margaret. "Figure what out, exactly?" "That you've been embezzling money from the company. All those mysterious deposits into your private account." She threw more papers on the table. Bank statements. "James found these. He's devastated. His own wife, stealing from Morton Industries." I picked up one of the statements, noting the regular deposits she was so worked up about. My quarterly dividend payments from Morton Industries, or as Margaret knew it, my embezzled funds. I had to admire James' investigative skills, even if his conclusions were hilariously wrong. "Did James show these to anyone else?" I asked quietly. "The whole board will know by Monday. You'll be lucky if you don't end up in jail." Margaret's perfectly styled hair was coming undone, her face flushed with righteous anger. "But if you sign these papers now, admit your guilt, and leave quietly, we might be convinced to show mercy." I thought about the board meeting scheduled for Monday, the quarterly shareholders meeting where I traditionally attended via video call, my camera off, using only my first initial and last name, E. Chen. Margaret and James had never questioned why their daughter-in-law shared a last name with the company's majority shareholder. They'd never even noticed. "And what about my position at the company?" I asked, playing along. Margaret sneered. "You really think you'll keep your secretarial job after stealing? You should be grateful we're not calling the police right now. James only held back because of his foolish feelings for you." I nodded slowly, remembering how I'd met James 5 years ago. I was doing one of my periodic undercover stints as a secretary, something I'd started doing to understand my company from the ground up. James had been sweet, genuine, and completely uninterested in status or money. I fell in love with his kindness, his integrity. When he proposed after a year of dating, I said yes without hesitation. But I hadn't counted on his family. Margaret had been horrified that her executive son was marrying just a secretary. She'd spent the last 4 years trying to break us up, convinced I was a gold digger despite the fact that I never asked James for money, lived within his means, and drove a modest car. "You have until 7 p.m., Margaret declared, straightening her channel jacket. "James will be here to collect the signed papers. If you haven't signed," she let the threat hang in the air. After she left, I sat quietly at my kitchen table, looking at the bank statements she'd thrown down. 4 years of careful planning, of keeping my true identity hidden to protect my relationship, all undone because James had gotten suspicious about my separate bank account. I picked up my phone and made 2 calls. The first to my lawyer, the second to my assistant, my real assistant, not the front I maintained at the office. "Sarah, I need you to move up the shareholders meeting to today. Emergency session, 2 p.m. And please make sure all board members attend in person." I paused, then added, "including James Morton and his father." "Yes, Ms. Chen. Should I prepare the quarterly reports?" "No need. I have something else in mind for this meeting." I spent the next few hours preparing, changing from my casual weekend clothes into one of the power suits I usually reserve for major business meetings. At 1:45 p.m., I walked into Morton Industries headquarters through the front door, not the side entrance I usually used when playing my secretary role. The security guard did a double take. He was used to seeing me in modest business casual attire, not Armani. "Mrs. Morton." "Miss Chen, actually," I corrected gently, holding up my CEO badge, the one I'd never had to use before. "I believe the board is expecting me." His eyes widened as he connected the dots. I could almost see the memories flashing through his mind. All the times he greeted me with casual friendliness, never realizing he was talking to the owner of the company. The elevator ride to the top floor was quiet. I used the time to center myself, to prepare for what was coming. The boardroom doors opened to a full house. Every member present, including my father-in-law Richard Morton and my husband James. "What is she doing here?" Margaret's voice cut through the quiet murmur of conversation. She'd apparently invited herself to the meeting, probably hoping to witness my downfall. This is a shareholders' meeting. I walked to the head of the table, where my usual empty chair waited. Yes, it is, I agreed, setting down my briefcase. And as the majority shareholder, I called it. The silence was absolute. James's face had gone pale, his father's red. Margaret looked like she'd been slapped. I believe there are some concerns about unusual deposits into my personal account. I continued, my voice steady. I thought we should address them immediately, rather than let rumors spread. This is impossible, Richard spluttered. Chen is standing right here, I finished. Elizabeth Chen, owner of 51% of Morton Industries shares. Or as some of you know me, Alina Morton, James's wife. I opened my briefcase and began distributing folders. Inside you'll find documentation of every deposit made to my account, standard dividend payments for my shares, all properly declared and taxed. You'll also find my latest business proposal for expanding our tech division, which is what I actually wanted to discuss today. James was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. In a way, he hadn't. I never let him see this side of me, the CEO, the businesswoman, the owner of $1 billion company. Why? His voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted someone to love me for me, I said softly. Not my money, not my position. Just me. And you did, James, until you let your mother convince you I was a criminal. Margaret had sunk into a chair, her face ashen. The bank statements she'd thrown at me this morning were clutched in her shaking hands. Now, I turned back to the board. Shall we discuss the actual business at hand? Unless anyone else would like to accuse me of embezzling my own money. The meeting proceeded, though nobody seemed particularly focused on the tech division proposal. James kept staring at me, his expression a mix of shock, hurt, and something else. Pride? His father looked like he was having trouble breathing, and Margaret had fled the room 10 minutes in. After the meeting, I packed up my briefcase and headed for the door. James caught up with me at the elevator. Elena? Elizabeth. I don't even know what to call you anymore. You could try honey or sweetheart. Those worked fine this morning, I suggested, pressing the lobby button. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I should have talked to you directly about the bank statements. I should have trusted you. Instead, I listened to my mother and what? Decided to divorce me? Take everything I had? The elevator doors opened to the lobby. The irony is, James, I would have given you anything. All you had to do was ask. I walked through the lobby, aware of every eye on me, employees who'd known me as the quiet secretary suddenly realizing who I really was. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. We need to talk. I typed back a simple response. Yes, we do. And I believe you said 7 p.m. tonight was a good time. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of calls and meetings. My secret was out, which meant I had damage control to do. By 6:45 p.m., I was back home, changed into comfortable clothes, waiting for what promised to be an interesting evening. The doorbell rang at exactly 7 p.m. But when I opened it, I found not just James and Margaret, but Richard as well. They filed into my living room, our living room, technically since James and I had been living here together for 3 years. The divorce papers, Margaret began weakly, are unnecessary, I finished, unless James still wants a divorce. All eyes turned to my husband. He looked torn, confused, hurt. I don't know what I want anymore. I feel like I don't even know who you are. I'm exactly who I've always been, I said quietly. The only thing that's changed is now you know what's in my bank account. Which appears to be considerably more than we thought, Richard interjected. He'd been unusually quiet until now. Why maintain the charade? Why work as a secretary in your own company? Because the best way to understand a business is from the ground up. I do it every few years, spend time in different departments, different roles. It's how I know what my employees need, what works, what doesn't. I turned to James. Meeting you wasn't part of the plan. Falling in love with you definitely wasn't part of the plan. But you kept lying, Margaret accused, though her voice lacked its usual venom. I kept my privacy, I corrected. The only lie I told was about my position in the company. Everything else, who I am, what I believe in, how I feel about James, that was all real. Margaret sat stiffly on my couch, her earlier bravado completely deflated. The divorce papers she'd thrown at me this morning lay untouched on the coffee table between us. I still don't understand, James said, breaking the tense silence. All these years, watching my mother treat you like a gold digger? Like someone beneath you? I finished for him. Tell me, James, if I told you the truth when we met, would you have believed our relationship was real? Or would you have wondered if every woman who showed interest in you was just after your family's company? Understanding dawned in his eyes. As an executive son, he dealt with his share of social climbers. You wanted to be sure it was real. Yes, and it was real. Right up until this morning, when you decided to trust your mother's accusations instead of talking to your wife. Richard cleared his throat. About those accusations, the board will need some kind of statement about today's revelations. I smiled coolly. You mean they'll need reassurance that their CEO isn't actually an embezzler? I think today's meeting cleared that up. Though we should probably address why a board member, you James, was investigating shareholders without proper authorization. James had the grace to look embarrassed. When I saw the deposits, I didn't know what to think. They matched our quarterly dividend schedules, but the amounts were exactly what someone owning 51% of the company would receive. I finished. Did you ever wonder why each had never attended meetings in person? Why they only joined by video camera off? We assumed they were overseas, Richard muttered. Singapore, maybe, given the name. You assumed what was convenient, I corrected. Just like you assumed your secretary daughter-in-law couldn't possibly be anything more than what she appeared. Margaret finally found her voice. All this time, you let me treat you like you must have been laughing at us. Actually, I was disappointed. I stood walking to my home office and returning with a thick folder. This contains every investment proposal James has brought to the board over the last 4 years. Proposals that were repeatedly dismissed because they came from the boss's son. Proposals that could have doubled our market share if anyone had bothered to read them properly. James stared at the folder. You read them? Of course I did. They're brilliant, especially the renewable energy initiative from last year. The one your father dismissed as too risky. I've spent 6 months quietly laying the groundwork to implement it. Richard's face reddened. Now wait just a minute. No, you wait. I cut him off. For 4 years, I've watched you underestimate your own son because you're too proud to admit he might have better ideas than you. I've watched you defer to mediocre men with MBAs while ignoring innovative proposals because they came from the wrong person. That ends now. I opened the folder, pulling out a particular document. This is a restructuring proposal. Effective immediately, James will be heading our new green technology division, reporting directly to me. That is, I turned to my husband, if he still wants the job. James looked stunned. You're offering me a promotion. After today, I'm offering you the chance to prove what I've always known, that you're more than just the boss's son. You're brilliant at what you do, James. You just needed someone to see it. I paused. Though I understand if you'd rather not work with your wife. Margaret made a choking sound. Work with? You own the company. Yes, I do, which means I also own the building where your charity holds its monthly meetings, Margaret. The one you've been using rent-free because of your husband's position on the board. I smiled pleasantly. We should discuss that arrangement soon. The color drained from her face. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? This morning you were ready to have me arrested. Now you're worried about losing your free office space. Richard stood abruptly. We should go. Margaret, come on. But James didn't move. He was still staring at the folder containing his proposals. You really read all of them. Every word. The solar panel manufacturing proposal. Brilliant. The wind farm initiative. Could revolutionize our energy division. The only thing holding these projects back was office politics and ego. After his parents left, James and I sat in silence for a long moment. Finally he spoke. I owe you an apology, several actually. Just one will do, I said softly, for not trusting me enough to ask me about the bank statements directly. He nodded, looking ashamed. When Mom showed me her evidence, I let her get in my head. Again, like I always do. I know, it's why I never told you the truth. I was afraid that I'd choose them over you. He looked pained, like I did this morning. James, I love you. That hasn't changed. But yes, I worried that if you knew who I really was, your family's influence would poison it somehow. That your mother would convince you I had ulterior motives. that your father would make everything about business. Instead, I let them poison things anyway. He picked up the divorce papers from the coffee table. What do we do now? I took the papers and deliberately tore them in half. Now, we start over. With complete honesty this time. The next few weeks were interesting, to say the least. Word spread quickly through the company about my true identity. The employees who had known me as Elena, the secretary, were initially shocked, then amused as they recalled all their casual interactions with their CEO. James threw himself into his new role with passion, finally free to implement his ideas without his father's shadow looming over him. The renewable energy initiative was already showing promising results. Margaret, unsurprisingly, tried to save face by telling her society friends she'd always known there was something special about me. I let her keep her charity's office space with a proper lease this time, at market rate. Richard struggled the most with the change in dynamics. Having to report to his daughter-in-law, especially one he'd dismissed for years, was a bitter pill to swallow. But his quarterly performance reviews left him no choice but to adapt. 6 months after the failed divorce attempt, James and I were having dinner at our favorite restaurant, the same casual place we frequented when he thought I was just the secretary. "You know what's funny?" he said, stealing a fry from my plate just like he always had. "Nothing's really changed between us. You're still you." "Do you expect me to suddenly start wearing a crown and demanding to be carried around on a golden throne?" He laughed. "Mom did. She's still waiting for you to start acting like her idea of a billionaire. Is that why she keeps sending me links to mansions for sale? And yacht catalogs. Don't forget those." I smiled, remembering the latest glossy brochure that had appeared in our mailbox. "Should we tell her we're happy in our regular house with our regular cars?" "Nah, let her keep trying. It's the most civil she's ever been to you." He had a point. Margaret had done a complete turnaround, now bragging to anyone who would listen about her brilliant daughter-in-law who ran a Fortune 500 company. She even started defending me to her society friends. Quite a change from the woman who'd thrown divorce papers at me and accused me of theft. "Speaking of changes," James said, suddenly serious. "I've been thinking about something you said that day, about why you worked as a secretary periodically, understanding the company from the ground up." He nodded. "I'd like to do that too. Start over in an entry-level position. Learn the business properly, not as the boss's son, not as an executive, just as me." I felt my heart swell with pride. This was the man I'd fallen in love with, humble, eager to learn, always trying to improve. "I think that's an excellent idea," I said. "But you should know, office romances are generally discouraged." He grinned, "Even with the CEO?" "Especially with the CEO. Although, I pretended to consider it. I might make an exception for the right candidate." As we finished our dinner, I thought about how differently things might have turned out if I'd signed those divorce papers that morning. If I'd let Margaret's cruelty and James' doubt drive me away. Instead, I'd stood my ground, revealed my truth, and given James the chance to prove he was the man I always believed him to be. 1 year to the day after Margaret's attempt to force our divorce, we held a vow renewal ceremony. Small, intimate, just the way we'd wanted our first wedding to be before his family took over the planning. This time, there was no society wedding announcement, no elaborate flower arrangements, no string quartet. Just us, being honest about who we were and what we meant to each other. Margaret attended, of course, though she looked somewhat pained by the modest celebration. She'd recently joined the board of another charity, one that actually required her to work instead of just lending her name, and the experience seemed to be slowly teaching her humility. Richard had mellowed considerably after James's green energy initiative brought in record profits. He even admitted during a board meeting that he might have been wrong about some things. Coming from Richard Morton, that was practically a formal apology. As for me, I still do my undercover stints in different departments, though now I have a partner in crime. James joins me sometimes, both of us working entry-level positions, learning from our employees, understanding their challenges. We keep a framed set of torn divorce papers in our home office, right next to James's first successful project proposal. A reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about giving people the chance to become better than they were. The company continues to thrive. Now known not just for its profits but for its progressive policies and innovative leadership. Turns out, having a CEO who's worked every job in the company makes for better decision-making. And those bank statements that started it all, they're filed away somewhere in Margaret's house, a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that sometimes the secretary you're looking down on might just be signing your paycheck.